Bonjour.
Hello.
Bienvenue à toutes et à tous.
Welcome to everyone to this West African Peering Forum. My name is Jean-Baptiste Milogo. I work for the Internet Society as Director for Technology and Internet Development. And I mainly work on Africa as a region, and I want to wish you once again a very warm welcome to this third edition of the West African Peering Forum. And I want to wish you a very warm welcome in the name of the Internet Society and all the partners who are working with us on this initiative. And in the context of the activities organized by our department, I would like to thank all the panelists and all the moderators who are going to talk to you about very interesting topics. So firstly, about development and investments in data center markets in the region and evolutions in the peering ecosystem in West Africa. But first, I'd like to tell you about the objectives of this initiative. So firstly, we want to promote the development of a robust and sustainable internet ecosystem in West Africa by encouraging local interconnection and pairing amongst different networks, especially through different providers in the region. Then we also wish to provide a platform to share knowledge, to network between different stakeholders in the industry, the telecommunications industry in West Africa. We also wish to showcase the best practices in this domain from other regions and to encourage their adoption in West Africa. And finally, this forum should be a place where we are able to advocate for policy and good practices and to really discuss these themes and to be able to then support the growth of local exchanges between networks and to allow for data to be exchanged between the different networks. So without further ado, I'm going to present the first moderator, who is going to be telling us about his theme, and then I'll give you some guidelines. Thank you very much and enjoy your session.
All right. Thank you, JB. I unfortunately do not speak French, so I will do my best to speak slowly and clearly. My name is Kyle Spencer. I am the Executive Director of the Uganda Internet Exchange Point and also coordinate the African ISP Association. The panel that I'm moderating today will talk about growth in the West African data center market. In today's digital landscape, data centers and ISPs play a crucial role in the generation and flow of internet traffic. Market experience shows that a vibrant network interconnection ecosystem drives demand for co-location and also shows that co-location can reinforce demand for interconnection. This is what we call the symbiotic relationship between ISPs and data centers. And so this panel discussion will focus on the recent growth of the West African data center industry and its relationship with internet exchange points and future prospects for development. On the panel today, we have Dr. Kris Ranganath with Africa Data Centers, Mr. Ike Nnamani with Medallion, Sunday Opadijo with Datacenter, and Mr. Silas Peprah with PAIX. And I will give a few minutes for the moderators to introduce themselves, tell us about their organizations and any recent updates. And if I unfortunately mispronounced any of their names, they can correct me. and after that, we will open up with the discussion. Assuming everybody on the panel is connected and logged in, I will start with Dr. Kris with Africa Data Centers.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Would you like to give an opening introduction to yourself and your organization?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Kyle. I'm Dr. Kris. the regional executive for West Africa based in Lagos of Africa Data Centers. So currently we operate in 3 markets. One is in Nairobi, Kenya, second one in South Africa, and the third one is Lagos, and still further expanding across some selected countries in Africa. Yeah, I think this is the best to have a short intro. Kel, you're on mute.
Thanks. Yeah. Sorry. And then Ike, are you here? And can you give a brief introduction of yourself and your organization? I don't know if he's managed to log on. So we'll move on to Sunday. Sunday from RAC Center, are you here? Can you give us a brief introduction to yourself and your organization? Ike, can you hear me? You're on mute.
Good afternoon.
Okay,
I
fantastic.
can hear you.
We don't seem to have any audio from you, but you're no longer on mute.
Can you hear me?
I think I hear you now.
Okay, thanks. I can hear you too.
It's a bit quiet.
I can hear you.
We'll give you a minute to tweak your audio. Silas, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Hi, so
Okay.
good
All right.
afternoon,
Your audio is
everyone.
also a bit quiet, but feel free to introduce yourself and your organization.
Sure. So my name is Silas. I'm a network engineer with PAIX Data Centers. So with our current update, we are currently expanding our Accra facility with a total campus power of about 2.5 megawatts. We have 2 campuses currently, Ghana and then Nairobi. And then we have upcoming ones in Rwanda. And then we are also looking at Senegal and then Abidjan. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Ike, let's try you again. Fantastic. I hear you now.
Okay, thanks. I'm Ike Nnamani, CEO of Medallion Data Center in Nigeria. We are a digital royalty data center company. And as most of you may know, we are a major peering and connectivity data center in Nigeria, and currently doing also a number of expansion, building new data centers for the sub-region. Thank you.
Okay, all right. And then Sunday, are you with us? And can you briefly introduce yourself? Okay, it looks like we don't yet have Sunday. Are you here? No, it looks like we don't yet have Sunday. So let's while we're waiting for Sunday, let's we'll give him a chance to introduce himself when he joins the session. But let's move on to the discussion. So I think as a little bit of background and context for the audience, it would be good to talk about what's happening in West Africa. My understanding is that West Africa is experiencing a surge in data center investment, like much of the rest of the region. And carrier-neutral operators are rapidly deploying facilities in various markets, including Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and other places. So the first question I want to ask the panel is, can you explain in your own words what's happening, and crucially, why now? Maybe let's start with Dr. Kris, if you could give us your insights.
Yeah, the market is, if you notice this after COVID, post-COVID, the market is just evolving, correct? And again, West is the biggest region, correct? With the population lookout, the new infrastructure development coming in, more cables coming in, and again, more hyperscalers are coming in. At least they're testing the waters. So, it is eminent that, we see this kind of growth, but though a bit slow than expected, but it is growing well. It is going very well now. Kyle, you're on mute.
Sorry, forgive me. The key question I wanted to get is why now, right? Like what's happened over the last 5 years that's really kind of created this rush of investment into data centers? What's changed in the region that now enables this kind of investment to occur?
See, if you look at the continent, this is one of those regions which was a slow starter, rather I can say in that way. But at least it has started, correct? So it is not now, it is the better time. This is the best time as far as I look at it in that way. It's a bit late though. Yeah,
Dr. Kris, let me also chip in here. I think it's a number of factors that is leading to this. One is the digitization of these economies. Most of the economies just started the digital economy. Officially in Nigeria, the digital economy was launched just 2 years ago by the federal government of Nigeria. So we're beginning to see a lot of digitization of traditional services, government, e-governance activities, the economy, healthcare. There's a whole new ecosystem that is tending towards digitization of the economy and services as we used to have it. The second is also new class of service, the need for low latency. This is prompting most of the platform owners to localize the infrastructure, because for some of these services, especially those that are very high in video, you need low latency for the user experience to be ideal. So that is also prompting a lot of development in terms of localizing infrastructure, purely based on the new classes of service being introduced, 5G and the rest of it. These are traditionally low latency service that requires closeness to the source and use of the data being distributed. And finally, I would also say some of the new policies in terms of data localization. Most of the countries are now introduced new policies on localization of data privacy laws, and the rest. So all this is leading towards the need to have localization of infrastructure, which is now leading to creation of new data centers.
Right. Okay. And Silas, what are you seeing in your markets, and from your perspective, what's happening in your markets that have really unlocked data center investment? Why now?
So I think, like Ike rightly said, looking at our part of the world, a lot of this digitization is being driven also by content, because now every other person is demanding content. And so as content is growing by the day, people are seeking this content, then these infrastructure platforms are also bringing their services closer to the market. So when it happens like that, then it means that as the demand increases, then there's also the need for facilities to make themselves available for all these avenues to reach the various people who seek them. So I think that is one of the main driving forces for what we are seeing in our market today.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some combination of local demand and international demand in these markets. Is that what you're seeing? Is there also regional demand? For example, are you seeing any demand through these coastal data center investments for inland countries, or rather demand from inland countries? Are you capturing any of that? Because some of these inland countries, I think, are not yet seeing data center investments themselves, and a lot of this stuff is happening on the coast. And I'm wondering if there's also some regional activity happening in terms of demand for co-location. Silas, go ahead. I think you're on, you may be on mute.
I'm sorry, kindly come back again. I think I missed you a bit on that.
I was wondering, so it sounds like in your answers that there's definitely some international demand to deploy connectivity and content in these markets, but also some local demand from enterprise. Are you also, is that what you're thinking? And is there regional business happening? Because a lot of these data center investments are happening in the coastal countries first. And I'm wondering if you see any demand from the inland countries that might be downstream from some of those markets, which don't have their own capabilities yet.
Yeah, sure. There's quite a lot of demand, and so now you look at previously the big guys were ideally not looking into coming into the region, but now almost everyone is coming in, and it's basically because there's more demand coming in here. Undersea cables are coming in. All these guys are coming in, and like I said, it's all demand driven. So all these guys are seeing the opportunities in Africa, and then everyone is seeking to get their fair share of whatever it is that is happening in Africa. So yeah, everyone is coming in because of some of these things. So
if I may also add to what
all right, said, and then yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
If I may add to what he just said, we are also seeing a situation where the cost of transmission to Interland is extremely expensive. And that is still a big bottleneck, right? So all the subsidies come to the seashore. The two biggest one that just arrived, and then to Africa is shortly on its way to the sub-region. All this still is at the coastal range. But to take it in the land, even within of transmission. So until those costs of transmission starts dropping, it's still going to be a little of a challenge to get these capacities there. The demand exists. Nobody is questioning that. There is demand in the either land, but the cost of transmission is still a big challenge, localized transmission this time. So while the submarine cables are coming, somebody needs to also focus on the cost of transmission, taking this to the countries that are not by the seashore. Even within the countries like Nigeria, if you check, apart from Lagos, if you start going in our country in Nigeria, it's still a challenge because of the higher cost of transmission. That still needs to be addressed.
That's a very helpful insight. Thank you. And Dr. Kris, does that align with your view as well?
Exactly, because, you know, all the cables coming into Lagos in Nigerian perspective or in Ghana perspective, it is an Accra, how we are going to take it. And that is the biggest challenge as far as, you know, this part of the world is concerned. And, you know, coming back to your question, of course, you know, there is a regional demand, a local demand coming in, at least it is coming up from as the industry is growing, correct? As earlier mentioned by Ike and even Silas, a lot of governing policies are falling in place, and that is getting enforced, especially on the data domiciliation side, correct? So it is something like a 60-40 kind of a thing. 60 comes from the international markets and maybe a 40% demand from the local market or the regional market.
All right, that's very good insight. Thank you. I want to move on quickly to a question about internet exchange points, because this is a peering forum, of course. So as we know, in many cases, IXPs have laid the foundation for the data center industry by making local co-location viable and are accordingly seen as a critical service for data center operators because of their ability to attract customers and generate commercial gravity. So my question to you guys is, how does your data center, or how do your data centers handle the IXP issue? Do you have internet exchanges in your facility? And if so, are they local exchanges? Are they international exchanges? Did you launch your own as a value-added service? And what considerations influenced your strategy and approach? And I'll start with Ike. Sorry, Ike. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Go ahead.
Both are correct. Ike, correct. Yeah, thanks. We do have the Nigerian Internet Exchange in our facility, both in Lagos and Abuja. As a matter of fact, my statistics may not be 100% accurate as of today, but as at a few months ago, close to 70% of all traffic in Nigerian Internet Exchange is being exchanged in our data centers. So that is the scope of the peering and connectivity taking place in the Medallion data center. But and this is because we are pretty much the first data center that the exchange was implemented. When it started, there were 2 sites in addition to ours, but the other 2 was by the incumbent operator who unfortunately didn't manage it well, and then it has to be moved eventually. Our approach remains, because we are carrier neutral, we've never seen the need to build our own exchange. Instead, we've decided to support the exchange in extension of our carrier neutrality. We feel it's been a good team. We've seen in Abuja, for instance, the exchange here, the capacity has gone from literally megabytes to gigabytes, tens of gigabytes within 2 to 3 years timeline as more connectivity come in and more people pair with them. We keep continuing to encourage that. I will continue to do that. There is currently this big conversation going on between the local exchange points that has been there initially and the foreign ones now coming in. The business model to be adopted is still up in the air. That is something that is subject to discussion, right? What impact would the new exchanges coming in that are foreign owned, how would they frustrate the effort being done by the national ones, or would they argue that? I honestly don't have the answer, but it's worth having that conversation. Maybe it may take a few more months or years to see the impact, but my personal belief is that the national exchanges should be encouraged to survive and continue.
That's great.
Once comes to each of the markets.
Okay, all right, thanks. It's really great to hear that you've had success working with the local IXPN operator there in your data center facilities. Silas, have you taken the same route? Do you have exchanges in your facility? Are they local, international? Did you set up your own? And again, what are some of your considerations as a data center operator around the strategy for addressing internet exchanges?
Hi, Kyle. Thank you very much. Yes, we do have the Ghana Internet Exchange in our facility. And then, yes, I think that if my analysis is right, then PAIX data centers carries about between 50 to 60% of the traffic that goes to the Internet Exchange. That's the Ghana Internet Exchange. However, as a DC, we are coming up with our own local exchange, which we are going to launch very soon. And then it's also going to help grow the ecosystem and then also build resiliency for the existing internet exchange. Because we see it as though if we have one internet exchange running as a country, and then yes, we don't foresee issues happening, but then what if something happens? Then it means that everything becomes a standstill. So we are building this resiliency. We have some support from Meta. We have some support from Online Communications and other funding parties who have come together to build this system so that people who find themselves in the past community can also co-locate or peer at this new exchange that is coming up. So yes, it's been a very good driving force for us as a data center. And then also as part of that, what we are also trying to do is to help the various internet service providers who are coming up to be able to get into any of these exchanges. As part of that, we are making our own exchange free of charge, because we believe that once these guys are able to connect to the exchange, they will also be able to get the various content and everything that they need from the exchanges. So you say, yeah, we have 2 exchanges in our facility, and then they are all up and running. Thank you.
Great, thanks. It's interesting to hear that as the data center, you're going to launch an exchange, and we'll talk a bit more about the potential impacts of that in the next discussion topic. But first, I want to get Dr. Kris's opinion, and then also we have Sunday here who I'll bring in after that. So Dr. Kris, what are your data centers doing in terms of exchanges? Do you have any in your facility? What are the considerations you guys have made in terms of strategy for how to engage with the interconnection ecosystems in your market?
As you know, ADC is a carrier neutral and a cloud neutral data center, ecosystem. So, always we prefer to work with the local players, and there's no second thought of not having IXPN in the DC. Correct? It's a premier one, and we and again, as we support the local content and the local players, so it is a must to have. Correct? So and we promote them. Correct? And again, this is a huge ecosystem. We need to support each other in the industry. So that is a key point, what we bring it out. And and work around along with the IXP and in Nigeria. Yeah.
All right, great. And another data center that is very happy to work with the local incumbent IXPN. That's good to hear. And now, Sunday, I see you've joined the call. If your audio is working, hopefully, feel free to jump in and introduce yourself briefly. And then also, we're discussing the topic of internet exchanges and data centers. So after briefly introducing yourself and the data center that you, or the data centers that you operate and which markets they're in, maybe can you share some insights into how you guys have handled the internet exchange issue? Do you have one in your facilities? Or one or more in your facilities, and are they local, international? Did you start your own as a value-added service, and what was your thinking around that?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be among the speakers for today's events. And I want to apologize for joining late, and I think is the reason why we are here on the event, because I had internet issues, and it shouldn't be. So internet shouldn't be an issue, but it was just unfortunate for me that I couldn't join on the nick of time. Okay, so my name is Sunday Okpadijo. I've actually been working in data center for quite some time now, almost I'd say more than 18 years in the industry, IT, data center, and telecom, with proven track record and success in the broad data center designs, operations, and maintaining uptime for the data centers that I've worked for. That's just about me. I'm an award winner for those that know me. I won an award in 2018 as the Data Center Manager of the Year, and I led my team in 2019 to win Data Center Operations of the Year. Since I joined Rack Center, we're back 10 years now, and we'll be celebrating 10 years of uninterrupted, service. When it comes to service, we've recorded 100% uptime to date, and we'll keep it up. Going back to your question when it comes to internet exchange, and I recall I actually worked with our former business development director. His name is Howard Phoebe. When he joined us in 2014, first thing he mentioned is that you need to have internet exchange. If you really want to be a player in the industry, internet exchange is the core of the data center and telecom infrastructure. So without internet exchange, I don't see where you guys would be if you don't consider. But we knew that having internet exchange, especially having internet exchange points in Rack Center, will cost us money at the time. But we put a business case together to the management, and it was approved because we had to spend so much money to have fiber connectivity, because you need fiber. And it was not that easy, but we got that working. I designed the structural cabling infrastructure that will enable any clients, telecom service providers, content providers, managed service providers within our infrastructure, our data center, ability to have a diverse, route to any of these service providers. So we were able to design that structure, cabling infrastructure. And today, pretty much, it's easier for us, and I'm still counting. When it comes to interconnects, we're close to 1,000, and we're growing. And it's just because of that infrastructure, because of the flexibility, the ease of deployment. So I can tell you, if a request comes to my table today, I know how to quickly, fulfill that request without wasting time. So there's no gainsaying. Internet exchange is key to maintaining localized traffic, is key to reducing cost, is key to, prioritizing the customers' needs. Without that, you will imagine what it means when you do a click, especially for data that has to be localized. And then when you do that click, it has to go to New York Exchange, to London Exchange before coming to Nigeria. So you know what it's going to take. And another thing that internet exchange would help us, especially, and I'm not surprised why we're seeing that significant investment in data center in West Africa. It will continue to grow. You need to consider our population. Nigeria today, as we speak today, we have internet connected population of over 150 million, according to NCC. So it will continue to grow, and data center investment will be key to realizing this the strategic growth, especially for West Africa.
Right. So just to clarify, you set up your own internet exchange in Ranganath, or can you clarify which exchange?
We didn't set up. We didn't set up, but we invited Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria to Ranganath. So we didn't set up our own. So because we wanted to play with an experienced individual who set up, Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, and for us to play in and understand how it works, because that system was already there. How do we bring it from Medallion to Ranganath, for instance, and which was what we did. And we recognized that we needed fiber, and we were the one that set up the fiber. We were the one paying for that services. So it was not just that easy to present that before the board, present that before the leadership team of Ranganath. It was just something that we need to really put some form of mouth-watering business cases together to be able to get approval. It wasn't that easy anyway.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarity. And I see Mohammed Rudman on the call here, and which is good because it sounds like he has some friends on the panel. This leads me to my next question and the next topic of discussion, which is about the impact of all this sort of explosive growth on the interconnection and co-location ecosystems in the region, and some of the sort of growth challenges and risks that could be faced along the way. So in my experience in the data center industry in the region, there's a lot of people who describe the current investment climate as a gold rush. And I'd like to explore a little bit about is this warranted in terms of the pace of investment, and what is actually happening in practice, and some of the issues that are impacting your growth. And building on to the previous conversation, we know that, for example, in Nigeria, there's a lot of data centers that have popped up, and some of them are not working with the local incumbent IXPN, and some have introduced new exchanges along with their facilities. And I believe at last year's Africa Peering and Interconnection Forum, we learned that there were something like 4 or maybe even 5 internet exchange points that are scheduled to go live very soon. And so my curiosity is around, is there a risk of oversupply or fragmentation in some of these really hot markets? So in other words, if there are too many data centers and or IXPs relative to the immediate demand, could it fragment demand to a degree that undermines everybody's growth? If you only have a certain number of peers and everybody peels off a certain number of them, does that reduce the gravity and disrupt the gravity in the market and undermine people's investments? And similarly for colo, is this rush of investment warranted, or are we actually seeing the uptake in customer growth that's anticipated, or is it materializing slower than people anticipated? Dr. Kris, I'll jump over to you for your first thoughts on this.
See, the supply versus demand, I don't think that should be an issue in this market, because if you consider the population of West Africa, we are talking about, around 400 million plus, correct? So, and even if you take 60% connected to the internet, there's a huge chunk is connected, and, more people is expected to come in. So it is not, we are limiting anybody here, correct? So there is a business for everybody, whether it is on the exchange side or on the data center pure colo side. If you look at Nigeria, what I could read from various reports is that, there is a potential of 1,500 megawatt of IT load. That is what people are talking about over a period of up to 2035 or something. Even if you take 25% of that we are talking about, around 325 to 350 megawatt of IT load, which is huge, correct? With the existing supply, what we have in the market, we don't even have 10% of that, which is live. Everybody is in the planning. A lot of us are in the planning sessions, in the expansion modes. And, as we mentioned earlier, there's a 60-40 parameter here, which we can look at it, 60 from the hyperscalers. Some of those businesses are moving in slowly. They are also testing the water. So, there is a huge business which we foresee here, though may not be in the pace what we all are expecting. It is a bit slow, but it is moving up. That's what I could say.
Okay, great. And then Silas, jumping over to Ghana, for example, does that align with your perspective there? What are you seeing in terms of customer growth versus what you anticipated and what you're actually seeing on the ground? And also, do you think there's a potential risk of fragmentation in some of these hotter markets? Ghana might not be the same as, for example, what's happening in Lagos, but I'm keen to know what your thoughts are on the matter.
Yeah, so I think that ideally, Ghana, for instance, is long overdue for whatever we are experiencing now in terms of data centers, because this should have been done some years ago, or should have been initiated some years ago. But like Dr. Kris said, everyone at the time was at the planning phase. We're all trying to strategize and look at what is going to sell, how the market is going to accept whatever we are building and all that. So yes, the demand is there. However, there are some factors or challenges that due to that we are not able to meet the demand. And then now that we have foreign investors coming in, other players coming into the industry to come up with all what they are doing, with even ourselves coming up with the expansion project that we are doing, it means that some way, somehow, we are going to meet the demand halfway. Yes, we have a long way to go because the demand in Africa alone is huge. And then, as a matter of fact, I don't think there's going to be there's not going to be any overpopulation of facilities and all that. Definitely, given the demand that is coming, all the facilities that are being built or all the facilities that are coming up will be able to meet up with the demand. And so I think that yes, it's high time we get this going. And then we also need to do this as fast as possible, because currently you are looking at a total of about 109.2 million internet users in Nigeria alone. Now, if you take that statistics, some other report that I'm reading indicates that by the year 2027, internet users across Africa is going to increase by 50%. Now, that 50%, are we in the position to be able to handle that traffic that is going to grow? Are we in the position to handle that demand? So it means that definitely there is the need for us to build these facilities. There's the need for us to have IXs deploying POPs at various locations and regions, so that once we get to that stage, we will not have people demanding for services that are not available, or people demanding for services that we cannot, service providers cannot supply. So we need to be market ready for the demand that is ahead of us. And that's my take on this.
Great. So far I'm hearing a lot of optimism. Ike, do you share the same sentiment over in Lagos, and particularly in the IXP and interconnection space? You know, we've got a number of internet exchanges that are launching in the area. And do you think that this is warranted, or do you think that this could cause any fragmentation? And again, as I've asked others, are you realizing demand at the rate that you anticipated? Is this gold rush happening in the way that everybody anticipated, or do we have to be patient and play a slightly longer game, even if we know that growth will come?
Yeah. Thanks. Your question is spot on, and I think I will pick on the last sentence you made, which is really, this is a long game, right? The reality is, just as we said, the digital economy in the sub-region is still at infancy. So while we know there's a latent demand, it's going to take some time for it to pick up to the point where it will be like what you have even in South Africa, in Africa or Europe or the rest of the world. So it's going to take some time to get to that point. That is the reality. So this calls for the right kind of funding, the right kind of investment, patient funding. Anybody that goes into this expecting a quick return is going to be a little bit shocked, because it may not happen as fast as people think. Just purely because the demand is there, but it's latent. It's still going to take some time to pick up to a reasonable standpoint. In our case, we're a little lucky because we are part of digital royalty. So we benefit from the global digital royalty market base. So we are building a facility and it's filling up very fast, but almost 80–90% of our new uptake is coming from the global digital royalty support team, right? So we are lucky. Some others may not be that lucky. So people just need to be mindful when they look at the way the market is trending. When you look at the case of the internet exchange, it's slightly different. As I said in my earlier speech, we need to really see how this plays out in the next few years. I see a situation where it's going to be fragmented. I see a situation where some of the data, the internet exchanges will offer it for free. The guy from PAIX Silas just mentioned that they intend to offer for free. So if you have a localized exchange, like the Ghana exchange or the Nigerian internet exchange that is not offering for free, and some of these new exchanges are offering it for free, what's going to happen? Eventually, people may start moving to these ones that are free, and that's going to create some distortion. So it's a conversation worth having to see how this is going to play out. It may not be immediate, but the impact of this, we're going to see positive or negative in a few more years when these things fully take place. But for now, it's a good rush. I totally agree with that. Everybody's jumping in. How it plays out is going to take some time for us to see. There's no two ways around it, both on the colo side in terms of data center, as well as the internet exchange. I have my initial opinion on it, but it's subject to be proven over time, especially on the internet exchange side. I see fragmentation. I see the business rules creating some distortion between the free ones and then the non-free ones. At least with data center, there's no free data center service anywhere. So it's more of an equal footing, right? It's going to come down to quality of service, customer base, and the rest. But at the exchange point, where you see people offering it for free, that definitely is going to create distortion in the market. And it's going to take some time to see the impact of that.
Cool. Very interesting thoughts. And Sunday, I want to bounce over to you before we move on to the next question. I'm hearing a lot of long-term optimism, but I'm also hearing that uptake of customers has been a little bit slower than anticipated. And so people are playing the long game, and that there may be a risk of fragmentation in the interconnection ecosystem due to the launch of all these exchanges. And it's unknown exactly how it'll play out and what impact that'll have. But I'm curious to know what your view on it is. Sunday, are you? There you are. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, the uptake will continue. It's not going to abate anytime soon because I give you an example where the local content in Nigeria, I have a client whereby all it does is to move the local content in Nigeria and move it to Europe to sell those services. So when it comes to investment in data center, I think we're not close to South Africa. So South Africa is talking in terms of hundreds of megawatts. That's why I'll take Terraco, for instance. Terraco, it's about 150 megawatts in terms of their IT capacity. By the time you sum everything together here in Nigeria, rack center, digital reality, Africa data center, main one, open access. By the time you sum everything, I think we're still not up to 150 megawatts. So the trajectory will still be there. And then what will drive this trajectory? It's our population. The population is critical. And we're seeing that awareness. What is that awareness that we are seeing? We are seeing the technologically literate population is growing. And as it's growing, this gives rise to more data. And when we talk about more data, we talk about data center investment. You need to expand. I know for the fact we are building a 13 megawatt data center. And I'm trying to see, clients are already waiting to take that space. Do you understand? So, and if clients are waiting to take that space, it speaks to, our population in Nigeria. And then when you look at the population of West Africa, what, internet, what is meant for all of us. I personally look at, opportunities that is just there. The opportunity is enormous. We should not look at internet exchange alone in terms of there are other services they were not seen today that will come up. Connected cars, connected home. People want to be, people that have farm, they want to be able to monitor everything real time from their phone. We're talking about 5G, we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're talking about big data, we're talking about IoT, we're talking about BYOD. All of these are driving data. And once they are driving data services, of course, they're asking us to go and build more data centers. So I don't think we will see that fragmentation in any time soon, but we're just evolving in this, especially in data center. It's just evolving. We've not started yet.
Very good insights. Thank you. And I do tend to agree with the optimism that I'm hearing on the panel. I mean, we have enormous populations that are yet to come online, and the evolution of digital services is driving ever more need for connectivity and data consumption. Just moving on to a related topic, I'm curious to know how the panel sees the various factors and risks that, or challenges, let's say, that inhibit growth, and crucially, if you have any ideas in your markets about how they might be addressed. Like in some markets, you might have policy that limits competition in metro fiber, or there's restrictions on international gateway, or there's high taxes, or we mentioned transport costs to inland downstream markets before. So I want to go around the group and get a sense of what everybody's perspective is on the challenges that are inhibiting growth, and some of the things that could be done to accelerate growth in our industry, or in the industry rather, in the West African region. So I'll jump back to Dr. Kris to start off. What's your view on some of the key challenges that you face when it comes to either bringing on customers or expanding your investments in the region, and what could be done to address that briefly?
See, every growing economy has its own challenges, correct? So we have a little bit more here in West Africa. I think I can say in that way to add up. Of course, some of the critical challenges, we look at the West African coast. Okay, the internal connectivity, the long distance connectivity. Maybe I can say from Lagos to London, I pay $2 per meg, but Lagos to Abuja, I pay $25 per meg. That is the biggest challenge majority of us have in the industry, correct? In all the cases, if you look, Lagos, 25 to 27 million population. But that is not Nigeria. Nigeria is around 200 million plus. So, when we look at that kind of an approach and the traffic that can drive the business, that connectivity aspect is one of the biggest challenges. We all look at it from the technical side of it or the operational side of it. Of course, then the second aspect, if you look at the recent changes, I can say the Forex. One of the biggest challenges every investor faces, everybody who wants to bring in and trying to repatriate that money always have this issue on how to address that. That is the biggest challenge. These are some of the, the governing policies that may need to change or that may need to be fine-tuned as the industry is growing, because any government who is expecting an FDI to come in, the repatriation policies must be a bit more friendly. Correct. And fixations on the rates, because everybody prefer to pay in the local currency. And that is the best way to do it also. But then what happened to the investor who is bringing the money in and who want to repatriate it? There's a challenge. Correct. So these are some of the areas we all face as an industry as a major challenge. Then the biggest one is human capital. That's the biggest challenge. If you need to fill up one position, you practically look at 200 resumes and eventually shortlist into 2, and you get one person whom we need to train for 6 months. After training 6 months, the person leaves. How you feel it? We can't do anything, correct? So that capacity building need to be taken care. I think, we as an industry need to handle that part of capacity building so that that doesn't become a challenge. That becomes, a positive side of the we can turn it as a positive side for the industry.
Great, very good insights. I do hear the Forex issue a lot, actually, and human capacity issues when I move around and talk to people about the industry. So Silas, are you do you have similar views? What are some of the key challenges that you face at PAIX with growth, and what could be potentially done to address those issues in your markets?
Yes, so for us, I think that Dr. Kris suggestion basically cut across almost all the various industries, because if I'm to take same as the human capacity, it's the same approach. So you get the guys on board. These are guys fresh from school. You get them on, you train them, and then eventually, once they get themselves acquainted with the system, then they get a better offer, and then they leave you. So all these are challenges. Now, when you come to the various customers in terms of connectivity and all that, it's still an issue, because it's easy to move, and it's cheaper to basically move from probably Accra to London than to go from Accra to the northern part of Ghana. And then it's basically because the cost of the infrastructure is not cheaper. However, you don't also have many options, because it's also a lot of money putting in these infrastructures across the border. So not many people or not many vendors go into that kind of business. It's just a few. And the few that are also doing it, it doesn't come cheap. So it's a very big challenge for service providers to get their services up. A lot of people want to venture the space, but yes, given the cost of backbone, given all these various costs involved, they rather look for other alternatives and then run their businesses as to coming in and then all that. Yeah, so, and then with regards to the data center, I think that one of the key challenges is in funding. And then if I talk of funding, I'm also referring to the cost of the high exchange rates, especially in Africa. We don't have a very stable economy where you know that your exchange rates are quite stable. So most of the various investors who come in are foreign investors, because for them, wherever the western part, we have quite a very stable exchange rate, so they are able to give you the funding. But then it also means that once funding is released to you, you are able to go through all the due diligence processes and all that, and then the funding is being released to you. The payback time also becomes shorter, because the longer it takes, the more the expectation is also from their end. So at the end of the day, you look at all these things, and then these are the major factors driving the industry. And then I think that if some of these issues are being addressed and then being taken care of in a more appropriate way, we will be able to mitigate some of these challenges. Yeah.
Cool. And Ike, do you share those views? We're hearing a lot about sometimes transport issues, whether it's metro or backbone competition. We're hearing about inflation and foreign exchange and capital extraction issues, human capacity. What are some of the issues that you're seeing, and what could be done to address them to improve growth, either in your market or markets that you wish to expand into in the future?
Yeah, one that has not been well mentioned in addition to all that has been said is power. Data centers depend on power. And when you don't have a very strong public utility system in place, you have to self-generate. Unfortunately, that also starts eating into your carbon footprint. So while you try to be as green as possible, you just find out that unfortunately, most times you have to run on generators and that is based on diesel or other very green source of energy. So power has remained one of the biggest challenge, and unfortunately, that is also the biggest requirement for data centers to be operated efficiently. So addressing that becomes something that is very paramount. In some of our cases, we had to see ourselves building a full dedicated transmission line to the substation at our own cost. In most countries, that is not done. The utility company delivers power to you. But if you wait for that, then you're going to be in the public supply, which is not very efficient, right? So if you don't have the resources to do that, then your data center is not going to operate either efficiently or cost effectively at the same time. So that is one major area that needs to be addressed. Maybe there can be other solutions beyond just waiting for government to fix that. I know some of the states are trying to now go into power generation to ensure that within their locality, something is done about that. Then, of course, add to that, you have issues about multi-potization, where even to build your facility, multiple agencies from the same state show up, asking for various levies to be paid and all that. All this, again, add to the cost of building and then ultimately to operate the facility, which either you pass this on to your customers and then they feel the price is way too expensive compared to what they can get it in Europe and other parts of the world, which again discourages them to come, or you have to go for a lower rate. And if you don't have good access to funds, right, that is cheap and long-term, your project is just going to struggle after some time. So it's still early days, as we said, but we feel if some of this is addressed, then it will lead to bigger adoption and growth. The demand is there, nobody questions that, but meeting that supply in a cost-effective manner becomes a challenge if some of these issues are not addressed.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good that you brought up power. It hadn't been brought up yet, but it's sort of always been the elephant in the room for quite some time. Sunday, what are your thoughts on this issue? One of the ones that I haven't really heard that occasionally can be an issue in some markets is a cultural shift for the customers, because these are kind of new services. And actually convincing them to let go of their infrastructure and move it into a third-party site can be an issue. Do you see any of that in addition to the other challenges that have already been mentioned, or what other challenges do you face in particular that you think are inhibiting your growth? And also, if you can offer any ideas about what could be done to resolve these in either your market or markets you're looking at in the future.
Okay. Thanks for that. So the issues that I know a lot of data center in Africa will be facing is availability of spares. So when it comes to availability of spares, it has always been a big challenge, because you don't find some of the manufacturer of critical infrastructure that we use in the data center in our local markets. So when you talk about the cooling system, when you talk about the UPS, when you talk about the tap-off in the data center, the building management systems, parts and all of that, all of these parts are, you have to order them from overseas. They are not locally available. There is none that you can just wake up in the morning and you say you're going to the market and you'll be able to buy them off the shelf. That's not possible. So that now put pressure on you as a data center operator to now keep spares that you don't even know when you're going to use. You don't know when the parts will fail. So, but you just keep this stock. You just keep buying these spares, waiting for a time this part is going to fail and then you replace. So, and I think one of the issues that we have learned to deal with in our own environment, because I see. We started with a modular data center, and everything in there is very, very sophisticated. The sensors, you look at the sensor, you look at the louvedos, you look at the air optimizer. And when you look at how they are wired together, you have the building management at the heart of it, controlling everything. And so if a particular component breaks or it fails, then if you don't have a spare, then you are going to have a major issue. So imagine when you lose a certain component that will reduce your redundancy in terms of capacity to fulfill your requirements of running the data center. So you don't want that to happen. So for us, what we have done is to learn how to repair certain components within, our own data center. So just make sure that you pick up this and then you have that capacity to repair it. And we've also realized that human capacity is also a problem. You train some engineers today, the next moment they are gone. So what we do is now allow for internship. As they coming from as out of the university, or during the time they can go for industrial attachments. We train them. They are familiar with the environment. So the skills that we look out for people that are very, very technical. They have mechanical and electrical background that they can fix certain component, they can repair certain components, just so that we can spend time on our own to deal with certain issues before we now go to the OEM to explain or to complain to them or to escalate to them the issues that we are facing. So if data centers in Nigeria have that capability to deal with certain issues of spares, because spares are just the major ones that can keep your data center on. Because if you lose your generator, for instance, now, because we primarily run on diesel generator, and for us, we just recently moved to gas. So like Ike talked about the utility. In our own case, our primary power supply now today is gas. We now have diesel as backup. But I want to tell you, before we move to gas this year, we've been running on diesel. So if you're running on diesel genset, you have to keep spares. If you don't keep spares, if you don't have that capability, you have engineers that cannot repair. They don't have the knowledge to deal with first level and second level issues before you now say you want to go to the manufacturer to assist you or OEM to assist you. So that is the training that we have given our engineers to be able to deal with first level and second level, and we keep spares. So you have to make sure that that is done. Human capacity, you have to make sure you train, regular training, and then make sure these guys are, hands-on. If you cannot get people that are hands-on running data center, you're going to have a problem. Then in addition to that, what we've also recognized is that the issue of data center engineers not having IT background, strong IT background, has always been a challenge. So as a data center manager, you must have IT and facility backgrounds. If you marry that, you are able to monitor your generator, you are able to monitor your infrastructure, and that way you reduce your risk.
Thank you for those insights. It was actually a really great point to bring up about the spares. Even in the internet exchange point industry, we suffer from the same issue. And the lead times on getting replacement equipment, if we don't have spares available, can be long, aside from the cost implications, because of the nature of our industry and being nonprofits, et cetera. And also, thanks for offering your insights into how you deal with the human capacity issues. That sounds like it's a good approach. I'm conscious of time, so I want to move on to our last question before final thoughts and talk about how you guys see our industry evolving going forward and where the next opportunities might be. So I'm curious to know how you see the market evolving, what kind of time frame, if you see any particular regions or countries or markets in the West African region in particular that you think might be interesting within the next 5 or so years. Please let us know your thoughts around that and how you see things shaping up in the near term. And I'll start with Dr. Kris. How do you see things moving forward over the next 5 years, and where do you see the potential opportunities? Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it'll be a case of reinvesting in the markets you're already in to address capacity there? Do you foresee expanding into new markets, and if so, potentially where?
Market is evolving, correct? So if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, we see great opportunities because we are not even started. Especially when we look at, the movement of hyperscalers and their own approach towards the market. If you look at the current scenarios, a couple of edge deployments are happening here and there, but no major hyperscale deployments are happening across Africa, I can say, other than South Africa, correct? So there is huge potential. We as an industry need to collaborate more and be ready for those kind of opportunities coming in. It is not like just a business opportunity or our own P&L. It goes much beyond that. It goes into employment creation. That is very key as Africa is concerned, correct? We are talking about 1.3 billion people, and on an average of age limit between 17 to 30, 35. So it's a young continent, correct? And people are looking for jobs. When they are not seeing it, they are jumping out of the continent or out of the country. So that is one of the key factors we need to address. That is a bit of challenge as well as an opportunity along on this particular curve of growth. So this 10 years is going to be 5 to 10 years going to be really, and we need to address it very focused approach. We need to take it rather, and yeah, that's what I feel. And on the West African market again, Nigeria is one of the key hubs. I can say it is the key market. So this market is going to develop very well because of the local demand, which is growing, and the international demands through either the cable systems or through the hyperscalers / OTT. Those guys are coming in. So I think Nigeria is growing, and Nigeria will grow in the West African market in a bigger way, because it is related to the population. However we look at it, eventually.
Right. It does seem inevitable due to the population and some of the other economics around that. Silas, what are your views? And I realize in this question I'm asking all of you to potentially reveal commercial strategy, but if you can elaborate a little bit on your thinking about how the market will evolve and where the next opportunities might be, either in countries you're already in or ones that are nearby. Share with us your thoughts on how you think the region is going to evolve over the next 5, maybe 10 years.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Carl. Yeah, I think that for us, yes, we will continue growing the market in which we find ourselves, but also Africa is broad, and then we are talking of West Africa in general. So it would also be good to look at some other countries where, demand is also growing, because what we are experiencing now, it's like I said earlier, was overdue some years back. And so if we are doing this today, then we should also consider that in the next 5-10 years, other countries are also going to evolve. Demand is going to grow much higher, and then technology is going to catch up with all these people. So it is best we position ourselves to look at other regions or other regions and then invest in those regions as well, and not only investing in wherever we find ourselves today. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And I'll continue with the rotation. Ike, what are your thoughts on how the region's going to evolve? Do you guys foresee yourself focusing on West Africa? Are you going to try to expand in other regions? Where do you see opportunities? Is it looking forward to hyperscale in some of the markets where you are? Is it looking at smaller scale plays in some of the new virgin markets? What are your thoughts on this?
Thanks. Well, from a digital royalties perspective, it's a Pan-African goal and vision. As some of you may know, in East Africa, we've got iColo, which is a digital royalty company. In South Africa, Terraco, the biggest in Africa, is majority owned by digital royalty. West Africa, again, Medallion, in terms of peering connectivity, the #1 in that market, again, owned by digital royalty. So just North Africa, that hopefully we probably see what happens there in the coming years. It's a market we are still looking at, which is North Africa. But if you look at it, basically, North, South, East, and West should ultimately be covered over the next few years by the digital royalty brand. But what we also do is, with Medallion, for instance, has mainly been a connectivity peering data center operator, right? What we are doing over the last few years is also encouraging and supporting the submarine cable providers. Some of you may not already know, but we are the ones building the To Africa cable landing station and support data center for Nigeria and Ghana. Those should be delivered later this year. And then we continue to support the peering community. That still remains our focus, to support to remain a carrier, pretty much data center player. We're not shifting from that. Again, we've seen some hyperscalers interest, which the data centers we are building would also address that. But over and above that, our core area is still going to remain peering connectivity as the core of our contribution to the ecosystem.
Great. That's thanks for the information. It's good to know how large Digital Realty's footprint is in the region and the growth prospects and opportunities that you guys see. I'm sure that's shared by other operators in this in this gold rush that we have going on right now. Sunday, I want to finally bounce over to you before we move on to the final thoughts and a little bit of Q&A, just so the audience knows we're going to have time, I think, for 1 or 2 questions. We'll do that following Sunday's thoughts on this. And then we've got another session coming up at 1:35 about the evolution of the West Africa peering ecosystem. So that's going to be a bit more focused on the interconnection side of things versus Colo, which we're talking about here. But Sunday, going back to you, how do you see the evolution of the regional market? Are you what are some of the things that you look for when you consider where to make your next investments? You may be muted. I don't hear you.
Thanks, Guy, for that question. So, well, we can only base, you can only look at the statistics, according to World Bank, Africa has the highest number of digital financial service implementation compared to other regions globally. So when you look at that, the total user base, which is around 700 million individuals worldwide. So Africa alone, and then when you speak about Nigeria, I know I have a direct relationship with some hyperscalers, and I've seen the requests coming for the new data center. And the request is very huge. So I know RAC Center will, it's looking at, expanding beyond Nigeria. So we're looking at, Cote d'Ivoire, we're looking at Ghana and a host of others. So, and like I said earlier on, when you look at where we are today in West Africa, by the time you combine, our capacity when it comes to IT load, I don't think we are up to South Africa, the whole of West Africa. And so that, that growth, I see it is there. And how to harness it, how to work with the investors, it's what we need to be able to project ourselves. We need to be ready. And so, and what will also make this to come to fruition will be government policies. So imagine if you want to build a data center right now, you have to carry out, environmental impact assessments. You have to carry out topographical studies. You have to get the building permits. You have to get approval from governments. We also know that that we experience some sort of delay getting permits. So we need to bring government into this discussion, bring them to the table to discuss how, policy that will enable investment in data center industry, because their policies can actually make, the industry to grow, or it could be a setback to the industry. So what the government has done in the ease of doing business, I think they should do it for us in the data center space.
Yeah, that is a good insight. I definitely agree that governments should align some of their policy and regulation to incentivize the growth of the data center co-location and interconnection space. We face similar challenges in the internet exchange industry. And of course, the IXP industry shares a lot of the same needs as the co-location industry. So that's really no surprise. Before I move on to final thoughts, I just want to thank everybody on the panel for their contributions. I'm glad that this is being recorded. I think it's going to be a very useful resource to have available offline for people to watch that aren't here today. But I know we've covered a lot of ground and there may not be that much more to say, but I want to go around the room and I want to ask everybody just for any final thoughts. Maybe it's also an opportunity to remind everybody of the organization you're with, where you operate, in case they're interested in co-location services in those markets or in that region. So Dr. Kris, as usual, let's start it off with you. And then after this, we will jump over to a little bit of Q&A before the next session begins. Dr. Kris, you may be muted in case you're trying to speak. Okay, it looks like we may have lost Dr. Kris. Silas, why don't you jump in the meantime? Any final thoughts? Let's remind everybody of who you guys are, where you operate, and any last comments you have on the panel before we jump to Q&A.
Okay, so we are currently live in 2 locations or in 2 regions. We are in Ghana, Accra, and then on the Ring Road Central, about 15 minutes away from the airport. And then also we are in Nairobi, Kenya, the Britain Tower. And then by end of Q3, end of Q4 or Q1 2024, we'll be live in Senegal. So these are our live locations and our planned live locations. So if there's anything, we can start some interactions on that. But we are currently live in Ghana and then Nairobi.
Right, and just to clarify, you're with PAIX, P-A-I-X.
Yes, I'm with PAIX.
Right, and then Ike, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Currently in Nigeria, we're in Lagos and Abuja. East Africa, Kenya, Mozambique, through Icolo, and then South Africa through Terraco. And then for Ghana, as I've said earlier, The To Africa cable landing station and data center is being built as we speak. So by next year, for sure, there will be operation in Ghana also.
Great, thanks. And that's a Digital Realty and its various companies. And then Sunday, over to you. Final thoughts and a reminder of your organization and where you guys have footprint.
Okay, thanks, everyone. RAC Center is located in Lagos, and we're currently expanding our footprint, building a 13 megawatt carrier neutral data center. So the plan is to expand even beyond Lagos.
Great. And then Dr. Kris, have you managed to rejoin us?
I'm sorry. Currently we operate in Cape Town, Joburg, Nairobi, and of course in Lagos. Expansions, Ghana, Abidjan, Dakar, and Casablanca on this side. On the east side, we are looking at Kigali. So that's what we are looking at currently.
All right, fantastic. And I think we have time for one, maximum two questions before we close the panel and move on to the next session about the evolution of the West African peering ecosystem. So if you have a question in the audience, please keep it brief because we have an issue of time and we'd like to get as many questions in as possible. I think we will be able to do two. Throw your hand up and we will try to give you voice in the Zoom session so that you can ask the panelists your question. So if you have a question, please throw your hand up or throw it in the chat. We will do our best to accommodate that as well. So I'm looking around for hands. I don't know if nobody's got them up or if I can't see them on my Ubuntu client or what. So we'll give a minute just for people to do that. And if we don't have any questions, which may happen, we may have covered all the ground that everybody's interested in, then we can close a bit early and I can hand it back to the moderator, JB. And I don't see any hands up, or I'm not able to see hands up. So with that, I think in the interest of giving back some time to the session managers, let's close off. And I just want to thank everybody again for participating in the panel. I think this has been a really productive and insightful discussion. Yeah, thank you all for your time, and thanks to all the attendees for being here. Again, our next session is going to be on the evolution of the West Africa peering ecosystem, so more focused on interconnection. And with that, I will hand back to JB or whoever manages to grab the mic.
Thanks a lot, Kyle. Thanks. My thanks also to all the panelists. It was a very great session. So I think we learned a lot on West Africa ecosystem and market development on data center domain. We want to take this opportunity also to thank our sponsors, PAIX, Team Zero, and Workaland. And we'll invite you to stay with us and follow the next session. Okay, so I'll maybe give the floor to our next speakers. Yes. Dans notre prochain modérateur, we should take the lead. Gila, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We have a second session coming up and starting in a few minutes. I will like to request probably the technical team to help me paste in the chat room the link for the second session. And we can we can join that room in the coming 5 minutes. Enoch or Ashley, if you can help me paste the link in the chat, and then we can allow people to join that second room for the second session. The second session will be about the evolution of the West Africa peering ecosystem. And we have a great panel that will be with us from West Africa, but also from outside of the region. So stay tuned. So you can't hear me? Okay. So can someone just show me that
Hi everyone. Hi Donald. Obina.
Hello.
All right. I don't know why we had to move rooms. You know, they should have been continuous. It will take time for people to join here. Hey, Coffee.
Oui.
Hello, sir. We are here, sir.
Mohamed,
Yes, how are you? Fine, thank you.
tu vas bien?
Fine, ça va bien. I was in Abidjan for West African Internet Governance Forum. I didn't see you.
Oh, puis tu m'as pas vu. Tu n'as pas demandé après moi. You don't ask for me. You come.
I asked of you. They said you are not there.
Not see Kofi.
I've actually not seen JB or Ishlan on this particular link.
You see that? I had to log out, log in. I was in the other session. So
Okay. JB is here.
You're in the correct session. Gila stayed in the other room, so he is about to join now. Apologies for
we shouldn't have separated the rooms in the first instance. It's the same webinar. It's a continuation. It's not running in parallel.
This is what we had discussed yesterday. We said that we would switch the rooms, and everyone seemed okay with it. If you'd like, we can all
understand switching.
Okay. We should have. Well, it's kind of too late now. Perhaps we can go to the first session again. If you all don't mind leaving and going to the first session. Thank you so much.
I think that's going to cause some confusion since JB is here and Gishlan is that way. Let's make a decision and inform the people so that people are not coming in here.
Okay, stay here.
Let's stay here. I will drop and go on the first session and invite people to join here. I think should be maybe so sorry for that for speakers.
Okay.
Thank you. I will leave and come back.
Okay.
Yes, in the other room we have 60 attendees.
For technical point of view, Mark and team, is it more challenging for? I think people will come here. Let me just drop off and invite them here.
I could stay here, JB.
You're going to do a video test?
Yes, we can do that.
That seems to be working. So I can see the interpreters are logged in. I've got that logged in. And I'm going to record on this.
Recording in progress.
Bridge. I'm just going to do a quick test on French. If somebody could listen on French, just to make sure that I can be heard.
In French transport. Parfait, merci beaucoup. Yep. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we're all good to go here. Thank you very much. Do you want me to press play on the video or just?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. For the interest of time, I think we can start. very much and good afternoon again from 2023. Sorry for that. Sorry for that. Can you hear me? Donald, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, thanks. Okay, so welcome to the second session of the West Africa Peering and Peering Forum 2023. This is session number 2, and we will be discussing about the evolution of West Africa peering ecosystem. My name is Gilang Heramugawa. I am the IXP development expert from the Internet Society, and I will be the moderator for this session. Some important housekeeping rules for today. The session is being recorded and the recording will be available. It is also streamed on social media, Facebook, Twitch, and Periscope. We can engage and we are asked to engage respectfully and responsibly. When asking questions and speaking, we need to keep it short, straight to the point and simple. And kindly, if you're asking a question in the Q&A session, please mention your name and the country. Also, we are inviting you also to get familiar with the Internet Society Code of Conduct that is shared at that URL. We can engage through the chat room. We can also ask questions in the Q&A session. At the bottom right, it's labeled Q&A. I think in English and in French, I think it's question-réponse Q&A. We can also engage through social media. We can use different hashtags that are displayed on the screen: IPA in Africa, ISPs, or West Africa Peering Forum, WAPF 2023. Interpretation is available. We have the French and English channel. Please switch to the language that you are convenient with. And captioning is available in English for this session. So this event will not be possible, and this session will not be possible without our sponsors. And we have PAIX, Team Camru, and Work Online, and we are so grateful for their continuous support. Then on our session today, we have a wonderful agenda, I will say. I will do a quick intro on the topic, and then we have speakers. They will have 1 or 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We have Mohamed Rudman from IXPN. We have Donald Jolie Obina from AF6. We have Kofi Armand from CVX, Côte d'Ivoire. We have also Frank Simon from France IX. And at the end, we will have a short Q&A session, and then we will close the session. So without further ado, I will give some minutes, one minute max, to each of our speakers to introduce themselves, and then we will take it from there. We'll ask some questions, but first, introductions. Mohamed, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Ghislaine. My name is Mohamed Rodman. I am the CEO of Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, which is the first neutral internet exchange point that was established in 2007. And right now we are the largest exchange in the West African region with around 110 peers, with a peak traffic approaching 500 gigabits per second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamed. Donald?
Hi, good day. My name is Donald Jolly. I am a senior network engineer at Work Online Communications. Work Online Communications is a wholesale IP transit provider in Africa. We have presence South Africa, East and West Africa. And I actually wear another hat where I do support at a local exchange point operator in South Africa. But today I'm wearing a hat of an IP transit provider.
Thank you, Donald. Obinna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Obinna. I currently coordinate the development of PAIX in Lagos, hosted at Datacenter. I'm a very good advocate of peering and interconnection. I'm very passionate about it. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see the great panelists who have been lined up for this conversation. Thank you, Gershlan, for moderating.
Thank you, Obinna. Kofi Armand, tu es le bienvenu. Tu peux te présenter.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je suis Kofi Armand.
Kofi. I am president at the Internet Exchange Point for Ivory Coast. I'm also the president of the consultation committee for the Internet Exchange Point in Ivory Coast. Thank you. Thank you, Kofi.
I go for English. So my name is Frank Simon. I am one of the founder of PAIX, created in 2010 in France. And we are today aggregating more than 500 networks representing 2 terabits of traffic. And we are the leading French internet exchange.
Thank you, Frank. So today we have an interesting speakers, but we also have an interesting topic, and we will be discussing about the evolution of peering in the West Africa region, or evolution of West Africa peering ecosystem. So that's the reason why we have a variety of speakers. So we will start off with some perspective, some unique perspective, because they are from different industries, but still in the same ecosystem. I would want to start with Mohammed. And Mohammed, I would like to have a sense of what are the recent developments in the peering ecosystem in Nigeria. We've heard about many things in the previous session, but feel free also to emphasize some of the things that you've seen that are quite important, and what are the key factors behind these developments? What made these new things happening in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you, Ghislaine, for that. Of course, in the last session, we had discussion in the evolution of new data centers in the West Africa region, more data centers coming in, more internet exchange points coming in, and there were discussions around, is that not an oversupply? And one of the speakers mentioned that, of course, there is not going to be quick return of investment for the data centers. It will take years. As people have noticed that, of course, the region is large. I think it has the highest population in the 5 African regions, and maybe that is attributed to that. But the reality is, one, you see, more data centers tend to spring up when internet bandwidth becomes cheaper. So in the region, we have seen submarine cables coming in, and specifically in Nigeria, we have seen the Equiano cable landing last year. And with drop of internet access, it means that more of the content providers that have caches across Africa can now be in those locations because of the drop in transit costs. And that's why South Africa, as you have seen, even though in terms of population, they are not that much, but in terms of data centers, content providers, that there are so many there, and it is attributed to the cost of transit, to cost of electricity, and all that. But let me come specifically to Nigeria, since you asked the development in Nigeria. One is, of course, we have seen more internet exchange points. Initially, there were only one, and later we have seen one of the data centers, MDX specifically, bringing on board West African internet exchange point called WAPF. And later we heard that they are collaborating with AM6 to set up an AM6 POP in Nigeria. And of course, Obinna is here, Rack Center too, as collaborated with the German exchange DKIX to establish an exchange point also in Datacenter. The major attributing factor to this is that there is a huge number of people that have gone online since COVID in Nigeria. As we speak, Nigeria now has the largest population in Africa. And when it comes to internet users in Africa, Nigeria is #1, and we are #7 globally. And by the year 2050, Nigeria, of course, is going to be the third globally when it comes to internet users. So the potentials are there based on this huge number. That's why you see more peering exchange points are coming into the ecosystem, because they have seen the number. As we speak right now, Nigeria has around 158 million people that are online, and 48% of them are on broadband. So that huge number is what is attracting the data centers and the internet exchange points. But I want to clarify here that unfortunately that the numbers, even though the numbers are fantastic, are good, but 95% of these internet users are actually using the internet through their mobile devices, right? And if you look at the mobile network operators, there are only 4 in Nigeria. And when you talk about the peering ecosystem, in such a way that almost all these major big content providers that are coming into the country will have a direct peering relationship with all the mobile network operators. MTN, for example, is the largest network operator in Nigeria, of course, but they are not the ones that have the largest traffic in the exchange point, even though they have 30% of Nigeria's population or above that are connected to the internet through them, because they do a direct bilateral peering with the content providers. So they see these huge numbers, but unfortunately, in terms of peering as an ecosystem, we are really starting up right now in Nigeria, because if you go to the AfriNIC website, you will see that there are only 251 registered autonomous system numbers in Nigeria, only 251. And out of that 251, I can tell you authoritatively, more than 40% of those are not active, because they are owned by educational institutions, they are owned by infrastructure companies like power, they are owned by universities, banks, and they are not really using it. So you are talking about roughly around maybe 120, 150 autonomous system numbers that are active, and I doubt they are even up to that. But if you look at South Africa, because it has matured, they have around 754 autonomous system numbers, which means that the ecosystem is really growing. And why is this happening? Is because of the lower cost of transit and because of the enabling environment. What we need to do, for example, in my own situation, what I'm trying to do in Nigeria is to see that we see emergence of all these smaller ISPs springing up, community networks springing up, that would have autonomous system numbers that will now give internet access to the rest of the population instead of through mobile network operators. If you look at it, fiber to home, there was a survey that was done. In Africa, averagely is around 2% fiber to home. But in Europe, it's around 63%. In the US, it's around 20%. And when you look at the population I mentioned earlier of 158 million people that are online, if you go to the regulator's website of Nigeria, ncc.gov.ng, you realize it's around 300,000 that are on fixed wired and fixed wireless. And those are the major consumers of bandwidth. And that is what you need, the smaller service providers, to create the peering ecosystem. In America, they have around 30,000 autonomous system numbers. Brazil has the largest exchange point in the world. They have around, I think, 7,000 registered autonomous system numbers in Brazil. So even though Nigeria is really top in terms of number of people that are browsing, but unfortunately, those people that are browsing are only browsing through their mobile. So when you look at the traffic trend, 90% of the traffic is coming from the mobile network operators. Only around 10% is coming from the fixed wired and fixed wireless from the traditional ISPs. And we need to reverse that, because if you look at it in Europe, for example, 70% of the traffic to 75% of the traffic is coming from the ISPs, when only 25 to 30% of the traffic is coming from the mobile network operators. So yes, there are a lot of development in Africa, but unfortunately, we need to work together specifically in Nigeria to see how we can increase the size of the pie, because the entire African region has only 2,600. You can check it, around 2,600 autonomous system numbers, while NCC in Europe has 44,000, almost 45,000 autonomous system numbers. So the ecosystem there has really matured for more and more internet exchange points, when in reality in Africa, and specifically in Nigeria, we have not really matured in such a way that we will be competing against only 150 active autonomous system numbers. I don't know whether I've taken so much time in this question to explain the development in the region and also particularly in Nigeria.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohammed, for that brief overview, a quick one. I know the few minutes are not enough to explain everything, but I will take one point that you mentioned probably to ask a question to Donald. You mentioned that the different submarine cables that are landing currently in Africa are considerably impacting positively the reduction of the cost. So my question will be to Donald, as you are in many sub-regions of Africa, can you tell us what is the magnitude of that reduction? That's one. And probably tell us more about that residential area where we are not developed as other region, Europe and etc. Probably you can give us some intake on that.
Yes, thank you. Mohammed, it's okay that you took a little bit of time because you touched on some of the things that I completely agree with and some of my views as well. But to answer the question, or just to talk about IP transit costs, those are obviously coming down with the number of submarine cables that are landing, along the coast of various African countries. And with that, competition brings down the costs of IP transit. However, it's the cost of the transit more inland, which almost doubles in price, because getting to inland countries, landlocked countries, or cities that are a few hundred kilometers away from the coast is where we still have to see that infrastructure being built and the costs coming down on that. And I think that probably is one of the factors for the low uptake of fixed line connections, where you will have fiber to the home or fixed wireless networks, because from there you have to get back to the coastal city where you pick up your IP transit. But IP transit is not only about getting content from off the continent, but it's about providing connectivity to other networks. So some networks simply are not in a position to be at an exchange point where there are all the content providers. So a transit provider will help that network get the content from a particular exchange point where there are other networks and other content providers. And just on the point of seeing traffic not going across exchange points, yes, data centers are really important because there's a lot of exchange of traffic that is happening over these PNIs within the data centers, and so they do facilitate that. But I think what we probably need to all start working towards, and what we try to do as a wholesale IP transit provider, is we encourage smaller networks to get ASNs from Afrinic so that they can participate in peering to reduce the IP transit costs. Yes, I know it sounds quite strange. I work for an IP transit provider and I'm explaining to customers how they must purchase less from us. But it is very important that our customers have sustainable businesses.
Okay. Thank you, Donald. I'll come back to you with regards to the inland infrastructure, probably to pick some of the best practices or the lessons learned in other markets in order to develop them further. So okay, Obina. So Obina, tell us more about the market of peering in general. Mohammed said that specifically for Nigeria, there are 251 ASNs, 40% are not active. Is there any market really out there that is really driving this development of new exchange points coming either in Nigeria or in the region of West Africa? Is the market growing, and what are the key factors contributing to that development?
All right, thanks, Gislan. Yes, there is. I agree with Mohammed to start with. 251 ASNs, and of course, majority of them are dominant, and that is the problem to start with. All right. So when you look at the ASNs that are available, registered, and are located in Nigeria, and you have that huge number of ASNs that are unused, somehow we need to convert that actually into active ASNs. But before we get to that, answering your question directly, there's a huge market for peering in West Africa and in Nigeria. I think Mohammed also mentioned the fact that there are a growing number of ISPs. Right now, Nigeria has about 250 ISPs licensed by NCC. Majority of them actually don't have ASNs, so they simply offload the traffic which they pick from other service providers. This year alone, NCC in Nigeria has registered about 20 ISPs already. In fact, I personally facilitated a couple of those guys, helping them come on board and get their registrations and all that. That tells you how quickly the turnaround in the Nigerian peering market is growing. And looking at IXPN, for example, I have supported the growth of IXPN for a while now, and I can see the massive growth of IXPN in the past 1 year, from about 300 gig to almost 500 gig, just in a matter of 1 year. That is a tremendous growth and a wonderful growth. So is there a growth? Yes, the peering market is growing, and that is what we are hoping for, and continue to make sure that the market continues to grow. What are getting these things? What is supporting this? You look at the content providers that are heading towards the Nigerian market, driven by the population of Nigeria, of course. AWS recently announced a local zone, and now the direct connection is available in Nigeria as well. You see Meta growing their footprint here. You see Microsoft growing their footprint, all the content providers. And in the past 1 year, I have personally seen the establishment of at least about 3 local cloud providers in Nigeria, and who are peering at the exchange points. Right? That's actions that are actually driving, the growth of peering, and shows that there is actually a growth propensity in this region, in Nigeria specifically. Now, when you look at PNIs, because of course the public peering in the exchange and private peering, which majority of the time we don't have insight to private peering, because of course, like the name says, they're private. But my position, being sandwiched between a data center and the internet exchange points, gives me that little capability to see what happens in that space. And you'll be marveled at the number of private exchanges, happening between service providers, of which a percentage of that can actually be pulled into the public exchanges, especially for publicly available transactions, when like trying to access BGP tools and all that kind of stuff. Why do you want these things are available at the exchange? So go to the exchange to pick up those traffic. So there is that huge traffic that is being exchanged privately between service providers, which can as well be pulled into the IX space publicly, so that smaller ISPs can benefit from those traffic. apart from the regular cloud content from CDNs and so on and so forth. We've also seen the growth of CDNs in the past few months in Nigeria. I happen to know that a couple of other CDNs who don't even have footprints in this region are beginning to think about this region because there's a huge market for, from their perspective, of course, their business, but from peering perspective, the only way these guys can offload their traffic is being able to participate in the peering transaction that happens in this environment. Now, I want to go back to the very first where we started in terms of the 251 ASNs, of which a majority of them are dormant. These ASNs are assigned, if you go through the AFRINIC objectives and guidelines, they don't give you ASN for you to put in your pockets or keep it in your drawer. You're supposed to use it to actually transact. So we need to get to a point where we actually go back to get these guys to start actively peering, start training them, start explaining to them how to build resilient networks, how to convert, their existing facilities to be peerable. They already have the facility. So make it peerable, leverage on the existing. And when you do this, you see the market will suddenly grow. Right now it's growing, but you can imagine the sudden surge of growth that would happen when you convert that. Cape Verde, for example, it's a country with about 500,000 population or so. Their internet penetration rate is way above 60%. Nigeria is 200 million in population. Our internet penetration rate just hit about 50% this year. It doesn't make sense. The statistics does not work, right? So what is the difference? The difference is the fact that, look, being able to utilize the resources that are available and being able to educate the community to understand, look, these things are there. You have these ASN registered, you need to use them. The market is growing, the peering community is growing. And I think it was in the last session where Dr. Kris mentioned that, look, it's like an ocean, it's big. It's all about all of us being able to put our hands together to make sure that this community, the communities are growing, that people are being able to peer, and so on and so forth. There's a whole value chain to be created. One of Nigeria contribute the largest contents in terms of film industry. It's, I think, the second largest film producer in the world. That's second or third, between the Hollywood and the Bollywood and Nollywood. Either the second or the third, I'm not so sure. But there is no value chain. It's either being pushed into the international content providers or being streamed via the international streaming services. But what is the value chain here? Local value chain being created by that traffic being generated from Nollywood alone. So these are propensity for growth that we need to look into and see that this market is actually way bigger than we're actually projecting it at the moment.
Thank you, Obina. It's interesting the way you are putting in context that the growth is there. So, and also Donald mentioned that, and Mohammed, residential network being one of the key market that needs to be growing. Probably we can come back to that later on. Okay. Kofi Armand, Kofi, oui. comment se présente le marché de l'écosystème du peering?
The peering ecosystem look in Ivory Coast. Could you give us an overview of that? What kind of challenges are present on that market? And what can we do to make sure that this ecosystem in West Africa kind of goes up a level in terms of connected networks and in exchange traffic? Are there breaks, obstacles, challenges that are kind of stopping it from developing and going to the next level? So could you tell us about the Ivory Coast and maybe extrapolate on the larger region? Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. In terms of Ivory Coast, which is a francophone country in West Africa, the market and the peering ecosystem is doing well. I can say that. Given the enthusiasm that we're seeing in terms of the country's IXP, currently we have a model that is a governmental model. It was set up by the government. But what we try to work on is really work on management and governance to really make sure that all national actors trusted us. And this model of management within the committees. Oh, your interpreter apologizes, but the sound is cut out. Oh, sorry, I was cut off. Yeah, can you hear me again? So our governance model within the consultation committee that we set up with operators and national actors allowed us to really manage this exchange point in a really inclusive way, and it allowed these operators to trust in our infrastructure. And so the Ivory Coast's IXP is doing very well. We have over 12 peering actors using the IXP. We have a daily traffic that's over 5 gigabytes, reaching sometimes 6. But we don't have the cache of Facebook and Google, etc., on the IXP. So, but I can say that it's doing very well. In terms of challenges and maybe opportunities for us, it's really to keep working so that content is really developed on the IXP. Like I said earlier, we have a traffic that has really increased recently because the operators trust us and they want to use our IXP. And so we're encouraging them to develop content on this IXP. And I can say that in the past few months, several operators on IXP actually went from 1 to 10 gigs on our IXP, which is revolutionary. You know, all these operators that you know, Orange, NTN, GVA, they all went from 1 to 10 gigs. So really they trust the infrastructure and they're prepared to cooperate using this infrastructure. And so that's what I wanted to say on that point. So our challenges, opportunities, it's to really keep working in that direction, to seize the opportunity presented by 5G that is being deployed here in Ivory Coast. We also want to use the opportunity of the CAN, so the Africa Cup of Nations, which will take place in Ivory Coast, and continue developing that infrastructure. So I can say that everything is going well in Ivory Coast. In terms of West Africa, I know perhaps Francophone West Africa, where we have one dominant operator. I do think that in order to develop the ecosystem in all of West Africa, we need to have a management model, a governance that really kind of works with each country to be able to really develop the peering all exchange points in these countries. That's what I think. I hope that answers your question. Okay, and could you tell us a bit more about how the Ivory Coast is interconnected with neighboring countries in the north or in the south? I think you've got quite a lot of neighbors. Do you have any projects that are on the go? Do you have any projects on the interconnection of exchange points or across borders? No, across borders. In terms of interconnection in Ivory Coast, we have 5 submarine cables. We have SAG-3, ACE, WAX, Main 1, and Mamu Africa. So all these cables mean that our country is very much connected. So we're interconnected with most of the countries in the sub-region. That's great. Thank you, Kofi.
The next, let's hear from Frank. Frank, you, obviously you're coming from France IX. You have the European context, and Europe is a different market, a lot of competition going on. So we noticed an ever-increasing competition in the peering ecosystem in Europe, with multiple exchange points have expanded beyond their domestic market. So how do you see the peering in the coming years, probably to give us an insight of how Africa will be looking like in the coming years if it happens the same way, and what can West Africa learn from what is happening in Europe? So your perspective from an outsider. Yeah.
Okay, so I will try to summarize a few trends I am seeing and some other ones that I'm imagining. So the first one is that it's true that a lot of international European ISPs are going outside, but when they go outside, they do not simply set up new POPs, they set up marketplaces where you can access cloud on-ramps, security solutions, and this kind of services. The second point is that ISPs are now acting like hubs. I mean that when they have POPs in one city, they interconnect all the POPs together. When they have POPs in a country, they interconnect cities together. And when they have POPs on a worldwide base, they interconnect countries together. So it means that some ISPs are evolving like if they were operators. I'm not saying that it's good or not. It is what is happening in Europe. The third point is that I guess we can expect, at least in Europe, to consolidation and more partnership between ISPs. Because competition is becoming tough, average size ISPs may aggregate themselves to compete between the largest one. So I expect to have more partnerships between ISPs, not only by having interconnection between each other, but also like having APIs allowing extension or propagation of services between ISPs. The first point I'm seeing is that peering in Europe becomes a kind of commodity service like IP transit was a few years ago. It means that the price of peering is decreasing, and ISPs, at least the largest one, are trying to find new source of revenues to complete what they have from peering. And they try to have more margin on additional services. Also, this is why such ISPs are evolving from mono-service platform to multi-services platform. And they are acting like international operators, like I was mentioning. And finally, the trend I'm seeing now is not that developed, but it may develop a lot. It is virtual POP. A lot of ISPs are virtual POPs through resellers, providing remote peering. But what I'm mentioning by virtual POP now is that some data centers, for instance, are providing through what they call fabrics. They are providing cloud resources in which you can configure virtual routers, virtual cross connects, and so on. So it means that international data centers today may be able to help a growing ISP to set up virtual POPs before going to a physical POP when the business model is big enough to set up real equipment to connect people. And finally, I do expect that large ISPs will develop offers like ISP as a service, not only to provide support to other ISPs, but also to be able to operate ISPs outside their natural scope, but managed locally by other people, but operated on a wider form by an international ISP. This is what DKX or some other ISPs are doing. And finally, for the question mentioning what West Africa could learn, I would say that West Africa could learn that the success of an ISP is not only coming from the natural players, initially ISPs, operators, carriers, and so on. This is the DNA for an ISP, but it's not enough. If an ISP wants to develop, it has to attract a wide profile of networks like educational research networks, e-commerce, gaming, social networks, medias, voice over IP, data centers or whatever, and also corporate company. And this combination of people make a rich ecosystem that brings your IXP live. If you only want to interconnect the 3 or 4 IXP in a country, you will fail because by default, the traffic between ISPs in a country is small when you have a limited number of ISPs. And this is the introduction of external players, external either from the country or external in terms of profile of network that would bring diversity and content to the IXP. So diversity is a success, and the other key for success is evolving from a mono-service platform to a multi-service platform, allowing marketplace services not provided by the IXP itself. The IXP should be a facilitator, but provided by the different type of networks connected to the ecosystem.
Thank you, Frank, for those insights. It's quite interesting to see that things are moving very fast, not only in Europe but also in Africa. For the interest of time, probably I will probably stop prompting questions and probably see if we have questions from the audience. Je vois une question de Serge qui est adressée à Kofi Armand. Please, if you have any question, please put that question into the chat room so that we can address it. So la question de Serge.
So Serge's question, Serge asks, Kofi Armand, the governance model is one of the main things for the IXP. Do you think this model can migrate towards a community IXP? Do you believe that all the IXP, if I can say so, or the governmental IXP needs to become community IXP to be successful? Thank you, Ghislain. Can I answer? Yes, of course you can answer. Yes, I will ask the questions one by one.
Yes.
Okay. Bonjour, Serge.
So, hello, Serge. As I was saying in my presentation, there are standard models for exchange points, and every country needs to adapt its model to its own situation. And when we put our IXP into place, we saw all the models available, but what was the best for us is what is done at the moment with an IXP that is monitored by COCVs. And so when somebody attaches to these IXP, you can use a part of this in Ivory Coast. And the difference is that they can choose somebody that is on the committee of this IXP, and it's by collaborating together with COFIDIS that we can ensure the development of our IXP. So for us, we found a model that suits us better. And as I said, this model has brought a lot of results for us. And today, in Ivory Coast, we have a lot of actors that are not operators, but that trust us and then use this IXP. We have, for example, international societies, companies that use our IXP. There's quite a lot of actors that use our IXP, and we truly believe that the model that we are using at the moment, is the one that is best for us. So you need to adapt your model based on your own reality. There is another question.
For Obi, Obina, and Mohammed. Nigeria has probably the best NOG community in West Africa. and organizes a great event every year. Yet, if we look at IXPN peering DB page, the ISP with the biggest capacity are Starlink, new to the market, GVA, not operating in Nigeria, or VTS from Burkina Faso. Why don't we see more Nigeria ISP with larger ports, being involved in their own community IXP/IXP? That's for Obina and Mohammed.
I will let Mohammed go first.
Oh, you can go first.
I didn't get your question. Sorry, explain.
So you can look in the chat. Why is the question is, why don't we see more Nigeria ISP with larger ports being involved in their own community? Yet the country has the biggest NOG in West Africa.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Question from Mathieu.
One is VGA is, I think both VGA and VTS are connected to Nigeria, but I'm sure 100% VGA is, but VTS, I'm not too sure, but I think they are also connected to IXPN. And why is it we don't see such? Honestly, it's the ecosystem. You see, there are companies that came, invested hugely in Nigeria to be such large ISPs like Smile Communications. There are other ones that have come and gone. And I think the issue is the infrastructure. Substantial part of Nigerian population are the ones that have the purchasing power are in those major cities. And those major cities are fully covered by the mobile network operators. And therefore, access to infrastructure to those companies is really expensive. Because if you look at it, for example, MTN and the rest that have infrastructure in Nigeria, it's costing them a lot of money because one is that there is a lot of vandalization in Nigeria. There are a lot of security issues in Nigeria, and therefore it's only the big telcos. One of the telcos clearly told me that if they want to dig for fiber, they gave the contract to the commissioner of police of that state so that their infrastructure to some extent is secured. And they have to run multiple along different paths, to reach a certain point. Point A to B is not only, one single fiber going, but they have to put multiple for diversity. And even with this diversity, I can assure you that, like, for example, between Kano to Abuja, we are running on the best network in Nigeria, and still they fail us constantly. So people have to have multiple service providers to offer them service. But if you look at the Francophone countries that he's talking about, they are usually small and their terrain is not that complex. When it comes to security, they don't have those security challenges. They don't have area boys like the ones we do, a community where they will vandalize your fiber, you need to sort them out. In fact, some of them have put them on their payroll on a monthly basis just to make sure that there is no fiber cut. So I would say that the challenge is the infrastructure in Nigeria. There is no electricity. Wherever you want to put a tower, a mast, you have to provide your own power. This, what is it called? Operators are running thousands of generators, thousands. And each day, if you know the amount of diesel that has been filtered, they've been stolen from those sites is huge. And therefore, the smaller service providers, ISPs that are coming on board, it makes it difficult for them to operate because if you look at the Francophone countries, all our neighbors have more electricity than Nigeria. And therefore, you can put a small mast on top of a building and you can transmit your wireless signal. But in Nigeria, no. Even if you find a building, a homeowner, you put it there, there is no electricity, guaranteed electricity in that property. I think these are some of the challenges that have hindered those big involvement of the big internet service providers apart from the mobile network operators. I hope that's the question and I hope I have answered it because unfortunately I was on a call. I just heard you mentioning my name. I quickly disconnected to answer. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay, to support what Mohammed had said, because there is also a reference to the NOG Yes, you're correct. We have a very functional NOG for a while now, which has now evolved into a bigger conference, right? The thing is this: most of the local ISPs, even though there is this thing in Nigeria where they say, if it is working, leave it alone. If it's working, leave it. Don't touch. So you have someone who goes to the NOG or goes for some other advanced training and understands, hey, look, I can convert some of my peering from PNIs, into and pick some of this traffic from the public, from the exchange points. You go back to your management to get approval to make those network changes and all that stuff, and you realize that no, you don't have to do that. We can't afford the downtime. We can't afford the changes, irrespective of what your justification might sound like, because businesses will lose money with those changes. So we have this issue of being able to translate knowledge into actual reality. In fact, I've had to meet a couple of, in the past few years, I've been supporting some of these service providers to come on board on the IXs, where I have to meet some leaders of business to say, look, this makes sense. You have to do it. You have to do it because it's going to help your business. It will save you more money if you go towards the internet exchange points. It will save you more money. So it's a gradual process. And then you also realize that there's been a massive brain drain in the Nigerian business space for a while now. Everybody, what we call the Jackpot syndrome, where people are running to Canada. So a lot of service providers are actually short staffs in a few years now. So you have a situation where one person is probably running an entire service provider environment. So there are very few things these people can do. Again, when you talk about the big players and reference to peering DB as well, you realize that our guys are yet to onboard some of these tools. For example, I know that in Nigeria, if you go to some of like IXPM, for example, there are a couple of MNO, like MTN, like Mohammed mentioned, is actually doing fantastically well, even though it's a huge challenge for them. But is that information reflected on the peering DB page? I don't think so. That does not mean that they're not doing well. There are also some other service providers that are doing fantastically well, local ISPs like IPNX and a couple of other ones like that, TZT Networks and some other ones, who are struggling in the midst of these challenges Mr. Mohammed just mentioned. They may not reflect all that on the peering DB page. So you may actually see some of those information. But hopefully, as we are beginning to have these conversations, engage the community, people begin to understand that, look, you can leverage on these network tools to share and talk about your own, blow your own trumpet, so that the way that GVA, VTS, and Starlink are actually taking more port, that these guys also, they've upgraded from the last time you saw they went on peering DB to get themselves registered. Some of the 1 gig you see would have gone up to 10 gig and so on and so forth. I know that IXPN is not at 500 gig with 1 gig ports. There is a whole lot of consumption. And on us, for example, at AFKIX, and AFKIX is just about 4 months old already, but we've already started, we have an uptake of about 5 service providers that have taken about 10 gig ports already. And these are local service providers. Although, it's here and there, the traffic is not flowing at the moment, but you can actually see the projection and see the growth rate. It's possible. They are there and they're actually putting effort to get that traffic across.
Okay, thank you, Obinna. As we are heading to the end of the session, I'm mindful of the time. Allow me just to share 2 questions, one from Juma from Nairobi, and there is one last question from Serge Gobin from Congo. Then we can go and then we can give our parting takeaway points. So Juma is asking, he's the director of product at China Mobile. He's saying, what's the progress of the Djibouti network by Orange? I don't know if it is related to West Africa. His second question is, Mohammed said 90% of traffic is on mobile networks and not from fixed. What could be the main reason for this? Is it policy? Is it lack of fixed infrastructure? 3, how can you open up the internet market in West Africa? I think you alluded to the power issue. Can that contribute to that problem? And the last question from Serge is asking specifically to Frank. Frank, merci pour ta présentation.
Frank, thank you very much for your presentation. By hearing about the new actors on the market in terms of peering, IXP and POPs, Do you think that there could be a hidden agenda or it could be a threat for the local IXP? Do you think you could talk about this and talk about, and if you think that the local IXP will disappear, are doomed?
The first question was not directed to anyone, but
okay.
Do you confirm that the 90% of traffic on mobile network is predominantly caused by the lack of power and connection?
Okay, so I think that's
residential networks.
Okay, can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, I think Jeffrey was referring to the Joliba network of Orange. Okay, I don't work for Orange. I don't know if anyone on the panel works for Orange, but so it's kind of hard. But I know that they've employed a couple of resources in the recent past, and I believe that means the project is ready to actually roll out and start onboarding people. A lot of people are pushing that project across. That particular service is also terminated at Datacenter, so whoever is at Datacenter can actually get capacity through the Joliba network. In terms of the 90% traffic being on mobile that Mohammed mentioned, of course, it makes sense with respect of the environment and the challenges that Mohammed have alluded to. So when you look at those challenges, you realize that you need to be a very giant company, very rich in resources and money to be able to hit and go beyond those challenges. That means you can only be a mobile network operator. Imagine trying to get services outside of Lagos. You want to go outside towards the south and far northern part of Nigeria, where there are a couple of issues with security and so on and so forth. You only have to be big to be able to do that. You want to go towards probably recently issues in the southeastern region, try to run cables between Lagos, where the submarine cables are terminated, to the far part of Lagos, or far part of Nigeria. You really need some resources to be able to do that. There are a few companies, like he mentioned, can afford to subcontract some of this work to big security companies. So it's hard. And Nigeria is also a developing country. I know some service providers who run very fresh cables, and then not up to 1 year, those cables have been cut by project development. So there's a whole lot that comes to play. But mobile network operators have the resources, they have the capacity, they have whatever it takes to actually go all the way out, beyond Lagos, beyond the far hinterlands of Nigeria. And remember, looking at the internet development in Nigeria, when telcos were licensed in 1999 and they started operation in 2000, they were the first set of people to start rolling out this infrastructure before the present-day broadband providers came into being. So it makes sense that these guys would actually carry the larger percent of the capacity as it is right now. But we are beginning to see a growth of service providers in Nigeria. Right now, we know a couple of people who have registered ISPs, but they say, hey, look, I don't want to play in the Lagos market. I want to go to Kano. I want to go to the southeastern part. They still have the challenge of being able to connect back to Lagos because it's a major issue. But gradually, we are beginning to see that people are embracing that challenge. And I see a situation where in a few years, maybe 2-3 years down the line, those areas would also grow, beyond just mobile network operators providing coverage in those locations.
Thank you. Frank?
Yes, so I try to answer to the question, is there a threat or a danger for an African IXP to see a wide international IXP coming in this country, right?
Yes.
I would say that it depends on how the national IXP in Africa is capable to evolve. The success not only to survive, but to develop against competition coming from an international country is to make sure that you understand your market and develop proximity services. By proximity services, I mean capability to attract national players that an international IXP don't have enough time to concentrate on because they prefer to focus on wider network and they prefer to bring international network. So This is the case we had in France, for instance, where there was France AX in Paris and Lyonix in Lyon. At the end, we merged together, but Lyon was very successful during many years because contrary to France AX that was focusing on wide networks, they focused on smaller networks and they were providing a lot of additional services that are never provided on any larger IXP. And the community they were able to aggregate was using this type of services. So this is one of the reasons of their success. I think this could be a similar model to Africa. And in France also, we were competing against wider IXPs. And either you decide to fight and to concentrate on your strengths, or you decide to stop the debate, and at the end, you are eaten by the wider IXP. So if you decide that competition can be a good stress, you may develop even faster than you would have done if there was no competition. And also, it's good to have two IXP in a country. You could have a national IXP and an international one. It's not really big competition because the type of networks are not exactly the same and the objective of each IXP are not exactly the same. It could even be a clever complementary model for countries willing to develop. So it really depends on how you want to evolve and your capability to react. If you see only an alternative IXP as a competitor you want to fight, it may help you to grow faster or it can kill you. But by default, if you don't have too many international competitors, it could be a positive stress. If you have a lot of international IXPs coming to your country, then you may disappear. But if you have one and you are the national IXP, it could be a good point to develop yourself.
See, thank you, Frank. Probably key takeaways, Donald, Mohammed, if you have any takeaway points that you want to share as we are concluding. And Kofi also.
Okay. They are mentioning about, the original community IXP. So one is for any community network out there, I think they shouldn't be afraid of competition of foreign IXPs coming. What they need to do is ensure that they work for the community, identify all the needs of the community and make sure that they provide those needs, being innovative, ensure that they have uptime and they work with the community towards capacity building and the rest. And for some of the African IXPs up to now, they have some obstacles towards joining. For some of them, the company has to be registered locally for the company to peer. For some of them, you have to have mandatory multilateral peering for you to peer at the exchange point. All those things should be removed. So at IXPN, we remove the clause that say you must be registered in Nigeria. So anywhere you are registered, as long as you have autonomous system number, you can peer at IXPN, and we remove the mandatory multilateral peering. So, and I also encourage all the community IXPs to ensure that they do surveys regularly to find out what are the requirements of their members, and find a way to also work with the regulators, because the regulators are government. We are working with them in Nigeria. They are the ones providing the link capacity to Abuja, to Port Harcourt, to other places. There was an intervention period, and that has really helped us scale and expand our tentacles across Nigeria. So thank you, Ghislaine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Any other takeaway points?
I think just from my perspective as an IP transit provider is that when I'm looking at connecting to an exchange point, we obviously look at who is on the exchange point. But cost is really, really important. And, if the cost of a port is the same cost of me provisioning backhaul into the country, then, I will probably, provision more bandwidth into the country rather than get a port on the exchange point. I don't want to do that because it goes against everything that peering is about. But it's just a simple fact that cost is a factor. So just for those exchange point operators, be very mindful about your port costs, and those that are running exchange points and offering free ports. There's no such thing as free. So obviously they are being paid for in some way, and it's probably with the co-location costs of that data center that I'm actually paying for that port. So I think just from that perspective, be aware of costs.
Thank you. Any other takeaway points?
Okay, for me.
Merci, Guylain.
Oui, Obina. Attends un peu, Obina va parler. Obina va. Yes, go ahead.
All right.
Obina.
Yeah, for me, I think in West Africa, we should not be scared of opening up of collaboration. The main definition of the word pairing is connecting, right? So we should be open to pairing. We should be able to should be open to learning new ways of doing things, which is one of the things we are driving with the exchange point here, AFKIX. We are trying as much as possible to make sure we create room for people to actually understand that they can do more, to realize that, look, there are a lot of ways they can do things, realize that there's actually a value in pairing, using and utilizing the internet exchange points. We are happy to collaborate with all the players in the market, and we're happy to collaborate with every single operator that is currently in the market. We are also happy to provide expertise to, if possible, our brothers and sister network operators and ISPs outside of Nigeria. We're happy to, co-events together, do events together, do community advocates, trainings, and so on and so forth. And I just want to put this on the table as well. Our AFKIX is actually not owned by any European exchange. We invited an European exchange to come and build for us. There is no connection. There is no cable or virtual connection between us and anywhere in Europe. Our facility is standalone. It's offshore. You can't access it internationally. We don't have the manpower to actually build from scratch. That's why we had to reach out to someone who have done it before to come and build. It's hosted at Rack Center. The facility is there, fully independent and run by us here in Nigeria and in Africa. And I can't stop emphasizing the fact that IXPN has done a whole lot for the Nigeria, and I will always support that community to continue to grow.
Thank you, Bina. Thank you.
Merci.
Oui, Kofi.
Kofi. I would like to say thank you to all the panelists. And I would like to say that the IXPs in West Africa and maybe in Africa more generally should not become discouraged. They should seek to understand their market. They should work on governance to really have the trust or win the trust of national actors. And I think that will allow us to really develop our IXPs in West Africa and Africa more generally. That's really what I want to emphasize here and as we conclude. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kofi.
To all our panelists, thank you, Mohammed, Donald, Obina, Kofi, and Frank. We are at the end of our session. Sorry, we went over time, but we are very grateful for the opportunity to have discussed all these interesting issues. So we again thank our sponsors, PAIX, Team Camru, and Work Online. And from here, let me give the floor to Jean-Baptiste.
And so,
Yes.
Gillian, thanks a lot for this moderation. And so I think I will only say thank you to everyone for your time and for your participation. Thanks also to all the moderators for the previous session and all the speakers. I also want to extend my thanks to the technical team, internally ISOC, but our translation team behind the scene we are supporting us. And I think that we have started exploring here some great discussion, but I want to invite you to continue the discussion in our side. And here also, I would like to thanks again, PAIX, Team Zero, and Work Online. And to continue what we start here, before maybe we meet next year, and I hope maybe in person for this West African Peering Forum, I will invite you to in Accra in August for our African Peering and Interconnection Forum. You can just flash this QR code for more detail about this event. And we'll be happy to welcome you and continue the discussion we start here today. And for the next part, I think as IXP operator, we invite you also to join our Manners initiative, because we are talking about maybe challenge, but there is also sometimes some technical challenge you can also mitigate through Manners. And as you may know, ISOC is providing some support to build or to develop IXC community in partnership with ICANN through Coalition for Digital Africa. So here I thanks for all of those organizations and those initiatives. And thank you very much, and see you up that next year in person for this regional peering forum. Have a good day ahead.